What you are telling you. Do you know that if you look at your life, the answer to not only who you are, where you've been, but what you're trying to tell you is written all over your life? Many people come to me, and one of the biggest questions people ask is just to try and understand where they're at and how they got there and where they're meant to be. But actually, the answers are in front of you a lot of the time. We don't realize it, but we're infusing everything we do with the energy of what we think and what we feel, and therefore the clues are right there. I'm thinking about somebody I knew, and somebody who would have liked to create a certain outcome, a certain type of life, desperately for the longest time. And they just couldn't seem to get the sort of, what shall I say, security and consistency that they were seeking. And also, let's say, kind of a sense of fulfillment too. And yet, what I noticed is that despite the fact that this person I'm thinking of had tremendous creative potential, created lots of great opportunities for building a meaningful working life and indeed life, they constantly sabotage themselves with obviously a sense of not good enough, but specifically, there was an attachment to not actually having that which they thought they wanted, which was that security and fulfillment and a better material life as well, they spoke of. And so, despite the expressed desire for this outcome, they just couldn't seem to achieve it. No sooner would they get their footing than it would feel as if the rug had been pulled out from under them. And so, what I went looking for when I spoke to them was what their attachment to not having that would be and what that represented to them. But you see, the thing is, it's there for us if we go looking. You don't need to be someone like me who makes this their life's work. It's possible for you to find these answers yourself. And what I noticed with this person is that when I unraveled the story and looked a little bit into their childhood, I understood that they hadn't, like so many of us, felt seen and heard and accepted by their parents. But the one way that one of their parents had of communicating love and support and care was through materially providing for them and being a little more than materially supportive, even generous in their demeanor with this person. So that represented something. That represented the only love and approval that they'd really ever known. And so every single time this person tried to venture into something new and built up something with energy, different projects, different aspects, different types of lives they tried to create, each time it seemed like no matter what happened, and they said to me, I don't get it. I've tried everything. Every time I do it, it just falls apart. And so they eventually understood through our conversations that, in fact, that they were sabotaging themselves because the part of them that was still seeking that love and that approval from, first of all, it was from childhood, from the parent, but ultimately what they're seeking is that within themselves. But nevertheless, the part of them that was still seeking that love and approval didn't want to let go of the support that they were getting, or that somebody else would provide them with that, because that would mean they weren't loved. So let me explain this a bit simpler. That was complicated. Essentially, they externalized their need for love and support because that came from their childhood need. And if they were to give that up, and this is coming from a young child perspective, then they wouldn't be loved. And so every time they entered a new potential project or opportunity, something would happen and they would essentially sabotage themselves, because if they were successful and independent and able to create this security that they craved and these fulfilling opportunities, then they would not be loved. So those messages were clear enough to read when we started talking. And if you sit with yourself, you'll find that you spread clues all throughout your life. You're trying to tell yourself something, and you will find it if you listen. So if you look at your dreams, for example, there's often things that you're telling yourself from your subconscious that rises up in your dream state. You'll be telling yourself that with the choices you make. You'll be telling yourself that with the rationalizations that you make for not doing things. Where you put your focus is as important as what you avoid putting your focus in. And any strong feeling, any way, any direction is indicative of a position, and usually for a reason. So you can read the signs if you'd like to understand better what's there for you. Pay attention to the things you say, the things you don't say, why you don't say it. Pay attention to your strivings. Where do you put a lot of energy? What does it represent to you? Pay attention to what you avoid, of course. Always very interesting. And start to connect to the feelings that you have at root. And if you find that difficult, and there's certainly a pattern recently, I'm noticing that I'm speaking to people who are finding it hard to connect to some very old feelings that they kind of vaguely maybe sense are there, but they've not really ever looked at. Then what you can do is just create the space where at least that conversation with yourself can happen. And so the most important thing is to just accept. There is no good or bad here. There's no good or bad. And so accept whatever it is that you're feeling, whatever you're thinking, whatever you are. Accept all of it and keep on accepting it. And don't judge some feelings as good to have and some as bad, because you can imagine then from the part of you that's emotional, that's feeling something, then there's a certain limitation there. Better not allow that emotion to surface, because obviously it's a bad emotion as per your assessment. And so there's no space for it to be heard. So create an almost, let's say, compassionate laboratory where you have no preconceptions, you have no expectations, and there's certainly no good or bad, and allow yourself to explore with that spirit. And so it's very revealing when you do that. If we have no expectations, there's room for whatever needs to be. When we have expectations, we very much we block out other potentials of experience in each and every way. And so we've closed down our opportunity for really understanding ourselves, or potentially for another person. These are my offerings today. They're a little all over the place because I've had that kind of day, and it's a beautiful evening here in Vancouver. I hope that wherever you are, you're able to stick your head out a window, go for a walk, get outside, breathe some fresh air, and some time to have deep and neutral, accepting reflections of yourself. Give yourself that.